Imagine standing in the heart of a colossal alien coliseum. Stone pillars stretching skyward, banners of unfamiliar symbols fluttering in the wind, and tens of thousands of alien spectators packed into tiered stands that seem to curve endlessly. Into the horizon, the air thrums with an unnatural hum, an eerie blend of alien technology and primal excitement. Every eye is locked on the center of the arena, where a lone human stands, his breath sharp and shallow. Daniel Kepler's boots crunch against the sandy floor as he surveys the scene. Across from him, the Zalari Queen towers like a living statue of war, 7 feet tall, clad in gleaming segmented armor that seems to ripple with energy. Her face is a mask of contempt, and in her hand she holds a blade unlike anything Daniel has ever seen. A jagged, curved weapon that crackles with arcs of violet lightning. A single strike from that blade could turn flesh to ash. Yet Daniel doesn't move. He's calm. Too calm. Because the Queen doesn't know what Daniel's hiding. And in moments, she's going to learn that humans have a knack for turning the impossible into victory. But how did it come to this? Why would an alien queen, a ruler of countless worlds, risk everything in a duel against a single human? The answer lies in the brutal traditions of the Zalari Empire. Known across the galaxy for their ruthless expansion, the Zalari had one method of conquest that set them apart. They didn't simply invade planets. They challenged them. Each world was given a choice: submit peacefully, or offer a champion to face one of their warriors in a trial by combat. If the champion triumphed, the Zalari would retreat, honoring their code of strength. But if the challenger lost, the Zalari claimed the planet as their own, enslaving its people and crushing any further resistance. For centuries, no one had bested the Zalari Queen. Her duels were legendary. Stories whispered of entire planets that fell after their greatest warriors were cut down by her lightning blade. She had become a symbol of unstoppable power, a figure so feared that most species surrendered without a fight. That's what Earth was supposed to do. When the Zalari fleet appeared in orbit, humanity had no time to prepare. The Zalari emissaries' message was simple: send your greatest warrior, or submit to our empire. But no warrior volunteered. Earth's government scrambled to negotiate, but the Zalari refused to talk. To refuse the duel was seen as cowardice, a silent admission of defeat. Earth had one chance to send someone, anyone, to stand in the arena, or risk annihilation. That's how Daniel Kepler found himself in chains, dragged before the Zalari War Council. He wasn't a soldier, at least not in the traditional sense. Daniel was a combat engineer, a specialist in battlefield technology. His role was never to fight head-on, but to outthink and outmaneuver his opponents. Yet when no warrior stepped forward, Daniel volunteered, not because he believed he could win, but because no one else would. I'm not a soldier, Daniel told them, but I know how to fight dirty. The Zalari didn't care who he was. The Queen's challenge had been issued, and now Earth's fate rested on a man whose weapon of choice was a toolbox, not a rifle. In the days leading up to the duel, Daniel studied everything he could. Zalari combat tactics, the Queen's previous fights, their armor, their weapons, their weaknesses. He spent hours in a cold cell, sketching diagrams in the dirt with his fingertip, calculating angles, impact points, and vulnerabilities. Queen's armor was a technological marvel, layered alloy plates that resisted both heat and kinetic force. But Daniel noticed something critical. The joints beneath her arms, where the armor flexed, were less protected. Exposed wiring glowed, faintly beneath the plating, connecting power cells to the Queen's weapon. That's your lifeline, Daniel murmured to himself, and I'm going to cut it. But that wasn't enough. Even if Daniel struck those wires, he knew he couldn't survive the fight without something more, something unpredictable. That's when Daniel started building. With scraps stolen from his cell's ventilation unit and discarded parts from a deactivated cleaning drone, Daniel constructed a crude but powerful surprise, a device he hoped would shift the odds in his favor. The day of the duel arrived, and Daniel found himself standing in the Colosseum under an alien sky. The crowd jeered, eager for blood. The Queen stepped forward, raising her lightning blade high as the arena shook with thunderous applause. Daniel clenched his fists, feeling the hidden device press tightly against his palm. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't have to be. It only had to work once. The queen sneered, lowering her blade into a fighting stance. The duel was seconds away from starting, and Daniel knew that when it did, the galaxy's most feared warrior was about to learn that humans don't always play by the rules. The Colosseum fell silent as a deep horn sounded, a low, thunderous note that reverberated through Daniel's chest. The duel had begun. The queen moved first. She surged forward with terrifying speed, her massive frame crossing the arena in an instant. Her blade crackled with violet arcs, hissing like a serpent as she swung it in a wide arc meant to cleave Daniel in two. He barely dodged, diving sideways just as the crackling blade carved a glowing trench in the sand where he'd stood moments before. The crowd roared, laughing at what they believed to be a hopeless display. But Daniel wasn't just dodging, he was observing. Every movement the queen made left a faint distortion in the air, a shimmer that seemed to ripple around her. Armor, some kind of energy field. That's how she's so fast, Daniel realized. The field wasn't just protecting her, it was augmenting her reflexes, amplifying her speed far beyond natural limits. Great, Daniel muttered under his breath. Faster and stronger. The queen's second strike came faster than the first, a brutal downward slash meant to crush him outright. Daniel rolled beneath it, narrowly avoiding the blade as it slammed into the stone floor, sending shards of rock flying like shrapnel. He felt the heat radiating from the energy field as he darted back to his feet. He couldn't outrun her forever. The queen's blade cut through the air like lightning, and Daniel knew the slightest mistake would be fatal. But this wasn't just a fight, it was a puzzle, and he'd already seen the first clue. The queen's armor pulsed faintly whenever she moved. The faster her attacks, the brighter the pulse. That power field must have limits, Daniel realized. The more energy she burns, the faster she'll drain it. That's when he started pushing her. Instead of running away, Daniel circled closer, forcing her to strike again and again. Each time she lunged, Daniel sidestepped, just enough to avoid the blade while staying within arm's reach. He could feel the heat from her armor searing his skin, but he ignored it. Every missed strike bought him more time. The crowd, once jeering, now murmured with confusion. The queen's attacks were relentless, yet she couldn't land a single blow. Frustration crept into her movements. Her swings grew wider, her footwork heavier. And with every strike, her armor's energy pulse flared brighter. She's burning through power faster than she realizes, Daniel thought. But Daniel's plan wasn't just to exhaust her. It was to strike when she least expected it. And that moment arrived when the queen paused, chest heaving, her armor glowing like molten steel. She raised her blade again, but this time her stance faltered. That's when Daniel acted. In one swift motion, he flung a small metal sphere from his belt, his homemade device, right at the queen's feet. It hit the ground with a sharp clink, then erupted in a blinding flash of light. The queen recoiled, her helmet's visor flickering as her optical sensors overloaded. For a heartbeat, she was blind, and Daniel lunged. His fingers found the exposed wiring beneath her arm. Sparks danced as he drove a sharpened scrap of metal, a crude shiv straight into the cables. The queen staggered back, a harsh metallic shriek escaping her armor as her power field flickered and died. The shimmering distortion that had once surrounded her was gone, and now she was just flesh and blood. But Daniel barely had time to register his success before the queen roared in fury. With shocking speed, she drove her armored fist into his ribs, hurling him backward. Daniel hit the ground hard, the air rushing from his lungs. His vision blurred as the queen loomed over him, her blade raised high. Even without her power field, she was still stronger, and she wasn't about to let him stand. Daniel's hand fumbled in the sand, searching for anything he could use. His fingers brushed against a cold, jagged piece of the shattered arena floor, a broken shard of stone. Gripping it tightly, he waited, knowing the queen's next strike would be the killing blow. The queen's blade came down like a thunderbolt, straight for his chest. But at the last possible second, Daniel twisted sideways and drove the shard of stone into the same exposed wires he'd damaged moments before. This time, the effect was catastrophic. The queen's blade flickered and died as arcs of violet energy surged wildly through her armor. Sparks shot from her gauntlets, and her muscles spasmed violently. She stumbled, dropping her weapon as her Damaged armor erupted in a shower of molten sparks. The crowd froze, silent and stunned. The queen, undefeated for decades, collapsed to her knees, smoke curling from her scorched armor. Daniel staggered to his feet, clutching his ribs and wincing with every breath. He had won. But he wasn't celebrating yet. The Zalari weren't. Just warriors. They were fiercely proud. Winning a duel didn't always mean earning their respect. If Daniel had humiliated their queen, her soldiers might still declare war on Earth. So instead of gloating, Daniel limped forward, and did something no one expected. He knelt beside the fallen queen and spoke, his voice strained but steady. "You're strong," he said, "but strength isn't just power. It's knowing when to stand back up." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the queen raised her head. Her gaze locked on Daniel's, and to his astonishment, she gave a faint, grudging nod. The Colosseum erupted in cheers, not of rage, but of respect. The Zalari warriors pounded their fists against their chests, saluting the man who had bested their queen, and shown her mercy. But as Daniel stood in that arena, feeling the weight of his bruises and the burn of his injuries, he couldn't shake one thought: this isn't over yet. Daniel barely had time to catch his breath before a sharp, metallic clang echoed through the Colosseum. The queen's fallen blade, still faintly crackling with spent energy, was being lifted by one of her royal guards. The massive warrior, a towering figure clad in obsidian-black armor, stepped forward, eyes burning with rage. His gaze locked on Daniel, and in one swift motion, he plunged the queen's blade into the stone floor at Daniel's feet. "You dishonored her," the guard growled in a guttural voice. "You won with tricks." The crowd, moments ago roaring with admiration, shifted. Voices murmured, some in agreement, others uncertain. The Zalari were warriors at heart, and while Daniel had technically won the duel, some believed he hadn't earned the victory. In their eyes, he hadn't fought with strength. He'd outsmarted her. And among the Zalari, cleverness alone didn't always earn respect. Daniel swallowed hard. He knew enough about the Zalari's traditions to understand what was happening. The queen's defeat wasn't just a personal loss. It had weakened her standing as ruler. Unless she reclaimed her honor, her position, and Earth's fragile peace would hang by a thread. The queen, still kneeling, reached for her damaged armor, her hand trembling slightly. The wires beneath her arm still smoldered, and Daniel knew she was too injured to fight again. Not yet. But that didn't mean the challenge was over. The queen's voice, hoarse but firm, cut through the murmurs. "He won by our rules," she said. "But honor demands a test of courage." Daniel's pulse quickened. A test? He had no idea what that meant, but whatever it was, it couldn't be good. The queen's gaze shifted toward a massive, iron-gated entrance at the far end of the arena. As she raised her hand, the gate groaned open, its gears grinding like the slow breath of some mechanical beast. From the shadows emerged a towering creature, something monstrous even by alien standards. It stood on 4 limbs, each tipped with jagged claws, its muscular frame covered in thick, armored scales. Its head was crowned with a bony ridge, and glowing orange eyes fixed on Daniel with unsettling focus. The air seemed to shimmer around the beast's fanged maw as it exhaled, a heat so intense that the sand beneath it blackened with each breath. The queen's voice was grim. "The Karathar. Only those who stand their ground before it prove their courage." Daniel's stomach twisted. He'd heard rumors about the Karathar, a creature bred by the Zalari for one purpose: to test those who claimed strength. No weapons, no armor, just one rule: don't run. "Great," Daniel muttered under his breath. "All I have to do is not panic when a fire-breathing murder lizard tries to eat me." The beast snarled, pacing forward. The heat radiating from its body felt like standing too close to an open furnace. The crowd shifted, eager for violence. Daniel knew he couldn't outrun it. The Karathar was faster, stronger, and seemingly immune to pain. But Daniel didn't need to outrun it. He just needed to outthink it. He recalled the way the creature's eyes flickered when it moved, like embers flaring brighter in a fire. It was watching for movement, keying in on motion, like A predator stalking prey. That's when an idea struck him. Daniel reached down and grabbed a fistful of sand, clenching it tightly in his hand. The beast drew closer, steam curling from its flared nostrils. Daniel waited, watching, timing each step. The Karathar's muscles coiled like a spring, and in that instant, just as it lunged, Daniel threw the sand directly into its face. The effect was immediate. The creature's glowing eyes flared in a burst of flickering orange sparks, its senses overwhelmed by the sudden cloud of grit. It staggered, snarling and shaking its head furiously. Daniel didn't waste the moment. He bolted sideways, not running away, but circling wide, forcing the Karathar to keep turning to track him. Each time the beast turned, Daniel grabbed more sand and flung it into its face again. Each cloud disrupted its senses just long enough for Daniel to stay ahead. The beast's movements grew erratic, its heavy body struggling to follow him. For all its power, the Karathar's strength came at a cost. It was slow to recover, and Daniel was faster than it expected. But he knew, this game couldn't last. The beast would eventually corner him. That's when Daniel spotted his chance. A broken section of arena wall, its jagged edge sticking out like a jagged spear of stone. Timing his steps, Daniel darted toward it. The Karathar, furious and blinded, charged after him. At the last second, Daniel dove to the side, and the beast slammed headfirst into the jagged stone with a sickening crack. The creature staggered back, dazed, before collapsing in a heap. Its chest rose and fell in shallow, ragged breaths, but it was finished. Silence gripped the Colosseum. Then slowly, the Zalari warriors began to cheer, not with mockery or hostility, but with genuine respect. The queen, now standing despite her injuries, stepped forward. "You didn't just survive," she said. "You fought with courage and cunning. The Zalari respect those who think, as well as those who strike." Daniel, still gasping for breath, couldn't help but grin. "Glad to hear it," he muttered, his ribs still aching. But even as the crowd cheered and the queen acknowledged his victory, Daniel couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. He knew the Zalari weren't done with him yet. He'd proven himself in combat, and now he realized he'd earned their attention in ways he never expected. The queen's final words confirmed it. "You've won this duel," she said, "but your greatest challenge is still to come." Daniel's smile faded. Whatever lay ahead, he knew this was far from over. Daniel stood at the heart of the Colosseum, sweat clinging to his skin and his ribs still aching from the queen's strike. The crowd's cheers were deafening, but he barely heard them. His mind was racing. He had bested the queen in combat, outmaneuvered the monstrous Karathar, and somehow earned the crowd's respect. But the queen's final words echoed in his head. "Your greatest challenge is still to come." Moments later, Daniel was ushered from the arena floor and into the queen's private war chamber. A sprawling stone hall adorned with banners of crimson and gold. Massive Zalari guards stood at every corner, their crimson armor gleaming like molten metal. The queen, still nursing her injuries, stood at the far end of the room, her gaze sharp and calculating. "You're stronger than I expected," she said, her voice low. "But strength alone won't save you." Before Daniel could answer, a holographic display flared to life, a projection of a vast galactic map. The queen gestured, and the image zoomed in on a specific system. A crimson star surrounded by jagged asteroid fields and swirling debris. A planet marked with alien glyphs glowed bright red. "This is Valthar Prime," the queen said. "The warlords of the outer clans are gathering there, and they won't stop at conquering Zalari space. They've declared Earth their next target." Daniel's breath caught. "Wait. Earth? Why?" The queen's expression darkened. "Because of you." Daniel stared at her in disbelief. "Me?" The queen tapped the hologram, and a new image appeared. A symbol emblazoned across a war banner. A stylized human skull, encircled by jagged black chains. "They believe you're a threat," the queen said. "Word has spread that a lone human bested the Zalari queen in combat. To the outer clans, that's not a victory. That's a challenge." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. "So what? They're coming to Earth just to prove a point?" "Not just that," the queen replied. "They believe you have a weapon. A power they don't understand. The secret that let you win. She narrowed her eyes. They won't stop until they find it, or destroy you trying. Daniel clenched his fists. His so-called secret weapon was nothing more than quick thinking and desperation. But to the warlords, that didn't matter. They believed Earth had something powerful, something worth invading. You need to stop this, Daniel said firmly. Tell them the truth. The Queen shook her head. The outer clans won't believe words, only action. She stepped closer, her towering form casting a shadow over Daniel. You've earned respect here, she said. But if you want to stop this war, you'll need to earn their respect too. Daniel's brow furrowed. How? The Queen's answer was simple and chilling. You'll fight their champion. The room fell silent. Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. The Queen turned back to the hologram, displaying an image of the so-called champion. The figure was a towering brute, a creature even larger than the Queen herself. Its armor was a patchwork of jagged, metal plates, each one scarred and pitted from countless battles. Strapped to its back was a massive weapon, part blade, part cannon, its edges glowing faintly with crimson light. His name is Vorektan, the Queen said grimly. He's never been defeated. Daniel swallowed hard. I'm guessing he doesn't play fair? The Queen allowed a faint, humorless smile. He doesn't play at all. Daniel stared at the image, feeling the weight of the challenge ahead. Outsmarting the Queen had been difficult enough, but this? Vorektan looked like a living engine of destruction. You expect me to fight that thing? Daniel asked. I expect you to win, the Queen replied firmly. Because if you don't, Earth burns. The journey to Valthar Prime was tense. The Zalari warship, a massive vessel bristling with weaponry, cut through the void like a spear. Daniel stood on the observation deck, watching the crimson star loom larger in the viewport. The planet below was a desolate wasteland, a world scarred by endless war. You don't have to do this, a voice said behind him. Daniel turned to see Commander Kale, a hardened Zalari warrior who had been skeptical of Daniel from the start. Didn't come this far just to quit, Daniel said. Kale studied him for a long moment, then grunted. Then you'd better understand what you're walking into. He gestured to the planet below. The outer clans don't just fight for power, they fight for blood. Vorektan's victories are brutal and public. He doesn't just kill his enemies, he breaks them. Sounds charming, Daniel muttered. Kale's face hardened. You're fighting more than just Vorektan. The crowd will be against you. They'll try to spook you, break your focus. They believe fear is power. Daniel nodded slowly. Then I'll just have to give them a reason to believe something else. Kale almost smiled. You'd better. The arena on Valthar Prime made the Zalari Colosseum seem tame. Jagged stone spires circled the battlefield, and pits of molten rock boiled at the arena's edge. The air stank of scorched metal and blood. Thousands of warriors filled the stands, their chants echoing like rolling thunder. Then the gates opened, and Vorektan stepped into the arena. He was even larger than Daniel had imagined, a hulking mass of muscle and steel, with crimson war paint streaked across his scarred face. His weapon hummed with energy, glowing brighter with each step. You're already dead, Vorektan growled, his voice like grinding stone. Daniel clenched his fists. We'll see about that. The crowd roared, and the signal horn blared. The duel was on, and this time there was no running. The air trembled, with the weight of the crowd's chants, thousands of voices pounding like war drums. Vorektan stood motionless, his hulking frame casting a shadow across the cracked stone floor. His jagged armor gleamed like obsidian glass, and his massive weapon, part sword, part cannon, hummed with a low, ominous thrum. Sparks danced along its surface like fireflies. Daniel felt the heat radiating from the molten pits lining the arena's edge. The air stank of scorched metal and sulfur, and his heartbeat thundered in his chest. Stay calm. Stay focused. The signal horn blared. Vorektan lunged like a living avalanche, closing the gap faster than Daniel thought possible. The warlord's massive blade came down in a blur of crimson light, and Daniel barely threw himself aside in time. The impact split the stone where he'd just been standing, molten sparks hissing into the air. He's faster than he looks. Way faster. Vorektan didn't pause. He twisted with shocking agility, bringing his weapon back around. Daniel ducked, feeling the heated air rush past his face as the blade whooshed by. He stumbled back, struggling to regain his footing. Supper. Crowd erupted with laughter, a brutal, jeering sound. To them, Daniel's retreat wasn't survival. It was weakness. Vorektan grinned, his jagged teeth flashing. "I thought you were a warrior," he snarled. "But you're just prey." He fired his weapon, an arc of crimson energy that sizzled through the air like a bolt of lightning. Daniel dove behind a jagged stone pillar, feeling the heat lick at his back. The stone cracked and splintered as the blast struck home. "He's testing me," Daniel realized. "He's not just trying to kill me, he's trying to humiliate me first." Vorektan thrived on dominance, and Daniel knew that's what he needed to exploit. "You think I'm afraid?" Daniel called out, stepping back into view. "I've seen tougher things than you." The crowd rumbled with amusement, but Vorektan's smile faded. His crimson-painted fingers tightened around his weapon. "You talk too much," the warlord growled, and charged again. This time, Daniel didn't dodge. He waited, just long enough for Vorektan's blade to swing down in a devastating arc. At the last possible moment, Daniel dropped low, rolling beneath the massive strike. As Vorektan's weapon smashed into the stone, Daniel swept his leg out, striking the warlord's ankle hard. It wasn't enough to topple him, but it made Vorektan stumble. For a second, just a second, the towering brute was off balance. Daniel sprang up and drove his elbow into Vorektan's ribs, striking hard beneath the armor's overlapping plates. The warlord staggered back with a growl, more annoyed than hurt, but Daniel knew that strike had planted a seed. "You fight like a frightened rodent," Vorektan spat. "Better than fighting like an idiot," Daniel shot back. The warlord's rage ignited like dry grass. He came at Daniel with wild fury now, each strike faster, harder, and more reckless. Daniel twisted and dodged, never staying still long enough for Vorektan to land a clean hit. He weaved in and out of reach, forcing the warlord to burn more energy with every missed strike. The crowd's mood began to shift. At first they cheered Vorektan's aggression, but as Daniel's strategy unfolded, those cheers turned uncertain. Warriors began murmuring, some impressed, others irritated. The longer Daniel stayed on his feet, the harder it became for Vorektan to maintain his image of invincibility. Good. Keep him angry, Daniel thought. Then he saw his chance. Vorektan swung wide, too wide, and for a brief instant his exposed ribs opened again. Daniel lunged in, driving his fist into the same weak spot beneath the armor. This time, he twisted as he struck, digging deep into the soft tissue. Vorektan let out a roar of pain and staggered back, clutching his side. The crowd erupted, half in shock, half in excitement. "You think that hurt me?" Vorektan snarled, voice ragged. "I've walked through fire hotter than that." Daniel didn't reply. Instead, he grabbed a loose chunk of broken stone and hurled it toward Vorektan's face. The warlord raised his arm to deflect it, but that's exactly what Daniel wanted. The instant Vorektan's vision was blocked, Daniel darted behind him and struck low again, another hard blow to the ribs. Vorektan bellowed in fury and stumbled toward the molten pit. The heat seared the air behind him. He turned just in time to see Daniel circling wide, forcing him closer to the pit's edge. "You're losing," Daniel said, voice calm. "You can feel it, can't you?" Vorektan's face twisted in rage. With a roar, he raised his weapon and fired blindly, wild energy blasts scorching the arena floor. Daniel zigzagged, weaving between the shots. The crowd screamed as one. Of the bolts struck dangerously close to the stands. Then Daniel saw it, his chance. The molten pit bubbled behind Vorektan, glowing brighter as fresh magma surged upward. Daniel sprinted toward the warlord, drawing every ounce of energy he had left. Vorektan roared and swung his blade in a desperate arc. Daniel ducked beneath it, then dropped low, sliding between Vorektan's legs. Before the warlord could react, Daniel shot up behind him and shoved hard. Vorektan's momentum carried him forward, his massive frame stumbling dangerously, close to the pit's edge. For a breathless moment, he teetered, arms flailing, before regaining his balance. "You're finished," Vorektan snarled, spinning back toward Daniel. "Not yet," Daniel said, and hurled a final handful of sand directly into Vorektan's eyes. The warlord staggered, blinded. He stumbled again, one foot landing on unstable ground. The edge of the molten pit crumbled beneath his weight, and with a final bellow of rage, Vorektan toppled backward. His armor hit the lava with a sickening hiss, and for a moment his body thrashed before vanishing beneath the glowing surface. Silence gripped the arena. Then, the crowd roared. Some cheered. Others howled in fury. But one thing was certain. Daniel had won. The queen, watching from her high platform, rose to her feet and raised her arm. "Earth's fate is secured," she declared. "The warlords will see this as a sign of strength, and strength is all they respect." Daniel, still gasping for breath, wiped sweat from his brow. "Glad to hear it," he muttered. But deep down, he knew this victory came at a price. He hadn't just survived. He'd made a name for himself. The Zalari respected him now. But that also meant more enemies, more rivals, and more dangerous challenges yet to come. And Daniel had the uneasy feeling that this war was far from over. The victory feast on Vaelthar Prime was a chaotic blur. Alien war songs, blazing pyres, and warriors pounding their fists in brutal rhythm. The Zalari and Outer Clan warlords alike had gathered to honor Daniel's triumph. But even as roasted, meat sizzled over open flames and goblets of spiced blood wine were thrust into his hands, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The queen sat at the head of the feast table, her face masked in calm authority. But her eyes, those sharp, calculating eyes, never stopped watching him. "You should be celebrating," Kyle grunted, slapping Daniel's shoulder hard enough to make him wince. The grizzled warrior handed him a cup filled with dark crimson, liquid. "Drink, you've earned it." Daniel eyed the drink warily. "I'd rather stay sharp," he muttered. Kyle laughed. "You think this is over, don't you? Isn't it?" Kyle's grin faded. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Vorektan wasn't just their champion. He was their heir. His death created a power vacuum, and that won't go unnoticed." He nodded toward a cluster of armored figures at the far end of the hall, Outer Clan warlords, speaking in hushed tones. "They'll keep their word," Kale continued. "For now. But you embarrassed them, and they'll be looking for payback." Daniel sighed, setting the goblet down. "So much for victory." "That depends," Kale muttered. "The queen isn't done with you yet." Moments later, Daniel found himself once again in the queen's war chamber, this time standing before a towering obsidian throne flanked by burning braziers. The queen leaned forward, her golden armor catching the firelight. "You've earned your life," she said bluntly. "And you've spared Earth, for now. But there's a greater danger coming." Daniel crossed his arms. "You mean those warlords out there?" The queen shook her head. "No. Something far worse." With a gesture, the chamber's central hologram flared to life, projecting an unfamiliar star system. A dark, jagged planet, turned slowly in the display, its surface riddled with unnatural scars, deep canyons that seemed to bleed crimson light. "This," the queen said grimly, "is Threxil Prime. It's the heart of the Drakhari Dominion, an empire that thrives on conquest." Daniel studied the image. "I've never heard of them." "They don't conquer to expand territory," the queen explained. "They conquer to erase their enemies, entire civilizations wiped from existence." "Great," Daniel muttered. "Another galactic death cult." "This isn't a cult," the queen said coldly. "The Drakhari are something far older, something far worse. Their leader is known as the Void Seer, and she's already set her sights on your world." Daniel's stomach tightened. "Why Earth?" The queen's expression hardened. "Because they believe you have what they seek, a weapon unlike anything in the galaxy. They've heard rumors of your victory, and they believe you possess a power strong enough to challenge the Void Seer herself." Daniel shook his head. "But there isn't a weapon. I don't have anything special." The queen's gaze darkened. "It doesn't matter what's true. They believe Earth has something valuable, and the Drukhari don't ask questions before they destroy. The hologram shifted, displaying a fleet of jagged obsidian ships, massive dreadnoughts shaped like serrated blades. They'll send their fleets to Earth, the Queen warned. And when they arrive, they won't conquer. They'll burn everything to ash. Daniel swallowed hard. So what do? The Queen stood. You'll fight. Daniel barked a dry laugh. I barely survived one warlord. How am I supposed to stop an entire invasion? You won't fight alone, the Queen said. I've summoned my fleet to Earth's orbit, but they won't be enough. The only way to stop the Drukhari is to cut off their power at the source, by striking the Voidseer directly. Daniel's mind reeled. You want me to assassinate the leader of a death empire? Not alone, the Queen replied. But you'll be the key. She stepped closer, her gaze sharp. They believe you have a weapon, a secret power that allowed you to defeat Vorektan. Whether you do or not doesn't matter. What matters is that they're afraid of you. Daniel grimaced. So you want me to pretend to have a superweapon? Queen smiled faintly. Exactly. For a long moment, Daniel stared at the hologram, watching the dark planet turn. The weight of it all pressed down on him. The war, the threats, the endless cycle of enemies that refused to let Earth stay hidden. You're asking me to risk my life on a bluff, Daniel muttered. No, the Queen said softly. I'm asking you to risk your life, to save your people. Daniel exhaled slowly. Then let's give the Voidseer something to be afraid of. The war fleet assembled in silence. A vast armada of Zalari warships, their hulls lined with glowing red glyphs of war. Daniel stood aboard the command deck, watching the planet Earth rise in the distance. You think they'll take the bait? Kale asked beside him. They'll have to, Daniel muttered. Because if they don't, his eyes drifted back to the hologram of the Voidseer's fleet. Those jagged black ships lurking just beyond the system's outer rim. Earth won't survive the day. The Drukhari fleet appeared without warning. One moment, Earth's orbit was calm, stars twinkling peacefully in the dark void. The next, the sky tore open. Jagged warships, black as obsidian, surged from the void like living shadows. Their hulls rippled with red veins of energy, pulsing in rhythm like a heartbeat. The lead vessel, the Blooded Crown, was a monstrous thing, its spiked hull resembling a massive claw. It loomed over the Earth like a predator waiting to strike. On the Zalari command deck, Daniel stood frozen, watching the ships spread into formation. He barely registered the Queen's voice barking orders or the flashing crimson alerts filling the displays. His gaze locked on one image, a transmission from the Blooded Crown. A figure stood at the heart of the warship's bridge. A tall, cloaked being wreathed in flowing black robes. Her face was obscured by a bone-white mask, twisted into a permanent hollow grin. Twin orbs of cold red light flickered where her eyes should have been. The Voidseer, Daniel whispered. The figure's voice slithered through the comm systems, whisper that seemed to coil around his thoughts. Earth's guardian. Your strength is known to us. Surrender your weapon, or your world will burn. The Zalari Queen's voice snapped through the air. You will have nothing. Then, you will have only fire. The transmission cut out, and in an instant, the Drukhari fleet unleashed their attack. Bolts of crimson plasma lanced through the void, striking Earth's upper atmosphere in blinding bursts of light. The Zalari warships surged forward, intercepting, the barrage with energy shields that shimmered like molten gold. Explosions rocked the fleet, and Daniel stumbled as the deck shuddered beneath him. We can't win a direct fight, Kyle barked, steadying him. I know, Daniel muttered. That's why we're not fighting to win. He sprinted toward the ship's control panel, fingers racing across the console. The Queen's voice called after him. What are you doing? Giving them what they want, Daniel said grimly. On the ship's holographic display, a glowing image appeared, an energy signature shaped like a swirling sphere of crimson fire. It wasn't real, but it looked real. Daniel's false superweapon. Moments later, the image was transmitted directly to the Drukhari fleet. Now they think I've got something worth dying for, Daniel thought. The Voidseer's warship shifted, massive thrusters flaring as it broke from formation and began moving directly toward Daniel's vessel. The rest of the fleet held back, forming a blockade around Earth. "She's coming," Kale muttered. "Just like you planned." Daniel nodded. "Now we make her regret it." The Voidseer's ship closed in, its jagged prow glowing with crimson energy. Daniel felt the air tighten, a pressure that pressed against his skull like a hand squeezing his thoughts. His vision blurred, and a whisper filled his mind. "You cannot deceive me." He staggered, gripping the console to steady himself. "You have no weapon." "I don't need one," Daniel growled through clenched teeth. The moment the blooded crown drifted within range, Daniel triggered the ship's hidden payload, an electromagnetic pulse bomb. A pulse of blue light erupted outward, washing over the Voidseer's warship. Its glowing hull flickered, dimmed, then sputtered to black. "She's dead in the water," Kyle shouted. "Not yet," Daniel muttered. The Queen's fleet surged forward, unleashing a barrage of kinetic torpedoes that hammered into the crippled warship's hull. Explosions rippled across the blooded crown, flames licking from shattered metal. For a moment, Daniel dared to believe they'd won. Then, she appeared. The Voidseer emerged from the smoke, her cloak billowing in the vacuum. She floated through, the void as if gravity held no claim on her. Her mask twisted, its hollow grin stretching unnaturally wide. "You've got to be kidding me," Daniel muttered. The Queen's voice crackled through the comm. "Finish her!" Daniel's hands danced over the controls, unleashing a final missile volley. Each warhead locked onto the Voidseer's position. They struck home in rapid bursts of flame. But when the fire cleared, she was still there. Only now, she was inside their ship. The air in the command deck turned ice cold. Shadows seemed to stretch and writhe across the walls. The Voidseer materialized before them, her burning red eyes locking on Daniel. "You brought this upon yourself," she whispered. Before Daniel could react, she lunged, her skeletal hand grasping his throat. A wave of cold swept through his body, numbing his limbs. "You have no weapon," she hissed. "No strength, no hope." Through the pain, Daniel smiled. "You're wrong." His hand shot out, clutching the device strapped to his chest. A small silver detonator. "You want my weapon?" Daniel rasped. "Here it is." He triggered the device, unleashing a concentrated pulse of raw electromagnetic energy, directed through his own body. The Voidseer shrieked as the blast washed over her, her form distorting like smoke in the wind. For a second, just a second, her mask cracked. Daniel twisted free, driving his fist into the fracture. The mask shattered, and the Voidseer's burning gaze dimmed to embers. Her body flickered, once, twice, then dissolved into a cloud of black ash. The cold vanished. The shadows retreated, and just like that, she was gone. The Queen's voice filled the silence. "The fleet is retreating. Earth is safe." Daniel staggered, barely catching himself on the console. His vision swam, and his limbs felt heavy. "You did it," Kyle said, grinning. "You actually did it." Daniel let out a dry laugh. "I'm starting to hate being right." Days later, as Earth's skies cleared and the surviving Zalari ships prepared to leave orbit, the Queen approached Daniel one last time. "You've proven yourself a warrior," she said. "But be warned, the galaxy has seen your strength. There will always be others who seek to challenge you." Daniel nodded. "Let them come." The Queen's smile was faint, but approving. "Then may you always find the strength to survive." As the Zalari fleet vanished into the void, Daniel stood beneath the stars, knowing full well that this victory wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning of something far greater. Because, out there, somewhere, another threat was already stirring, and when it arrived, Daniel knew he'd be ready. If you enjoyed this journey through courage, deception, and survival, consider joining us on HFY Chronicles-849. Every click, comment, and subscription keeps these stories coming, and we can't wait to explore the next adventure with you.